Ever had someone betray your trust, then turn around and act like nothing happened? They cracked your heart, twisted your reality, made you question your worth, but now they want to smile and say, "Hey, how are you?" And suddenly, you're the dramatic one for remembering what they did. Sounds familiar? Let's talk about it. They crossed every boundary, lied to your face, manipulated your emotions, humiliated you in ways that still echo in your mind, and now, they want to act like it's all water under the bridge. Like none of it ever happened. You're just supposed to forget it all, smile back, play nice, and move on. But let's be clear here, actions carry consequences. And some people, no matter how much they fake remorse, need to learn that truth the hard way. We live in a world where too many expect forgiveness like it's their default setting. No growth. No accountability. Just a lazy, sorry, tossed your way, as if that's enough to reset everything. But not this time. Not with you. In today's video, I'm breaking down 5 raw and real reasons why certain people absolutely deserve to face the fallout of their choices, and why holding them accountable isn't cruel, it's crucial. Because here's the thing, when you finally stop letting people bulldoze your boundaries, you're not just protecting your peace, you're declaring that the cycle ends with you. If you've ever felt guilty for walking away, if you've ever second-guessed your right to be angry, or if you've swallowed your voice just to keep the peace, this right here is your moment of clarity. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to share will give you the strength to stop explaining, stop apologizing, and start standing in your truth. Reason 1, they weren't sorry. They were just sorry they got caught. You've probably heard that forgiving someone is like setting a prisoner free, and then discovering that the prisoner was you. It's poetic, right? But here's what they don't tell you, that prison door. It only locks behind you if the person on the other side refuses to change. We're living in a culture obsessed with blanket forgiveness. Scroll through your feed, be the bigger person, let it go, don't hold a grudge. It sounds noble, but often, these messages are twisted into tools of emotional manipulation. They're used to guilt people, especially the empathetic, the emotionally intelligent, the soft-hearted, into tolerating what should never be tolerated. Into giving endless chances to those who keep causing harm. Let's set the record straight, forgiveness and letting someone off the hook. They are not the same thing. And on that note, let's dive into the next reason, where we really start to unravel the damage that enabling behavior can cause, not just to you, but to everyone around you. Previously, we uncovered a hard truth: some people aren't sorry, they're just sorry they got caught. But what happens when there are no consequences for their actions? That's where the real damage begins. Forgiveness is deeply personal, it's an inward act, a quiet decision to begin healing your own heart. But consequences? Those are external. They are the natural price someone pays for their behavior. When a person betrays you, disrespects you, or blatantly crosses your boundaries, and nothing happens, no resistance, no boundaries enforced, the message they internalize is chillingly simple. That worked. I can do it again. People, by nature, learn through outcomes. Think about it, a child touches a hot stove once, and immediately understands not to touch it again. That painful result shapes their future actions. The same logic applies to adults, especially those who manipulate, or act without regard. If their bad behavior leads to success, satisfaction, or no consequence at all, why would they ever stop? It's not always because they're malicious in the movie villain sense. It's because the behavior works. It gets them what they want. That's where the danger begins, when they hurt you, and assume forgiveness means full access again. Instant reconciliation. A clean emotional slate. No reflection, no responsibility. But that's not forgiveness. That's emotional self-erasure. That's you handing over your dignity, piece by piece, as if it were disposable. This becomes especially painful in older generations. With age often comes wisdom, yes, but also empathy. A softer heart. A tendency to give people one more chance, and then another. Parents excuse the cruelty of their grown children, calling it stress. Lifelong friends overlook biting words, brushing them off as just how he is. Spouses remain silent, in the face of betrayal, all in the name of peace. And while they suffer quietly, the one who hurt them gets exactly what they hoped for: no resistance, no backlash, just another open door to your time, your trust, and your inner peace. But there is a different path, and ancient philosophy offers us the clarity we need. The Stoics taught that while we cannot control the behavior of others, we have full authority over our response. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. And that strength doesn't mean being passive. It means choosing where your energy goes. It means standing up and saying, "No more." Not because you want revenge, but because you respect yourself. You can forgive in your heart, and still shut the door. Forgiveness doesn't require you to reopen your life to the very person who slammed it shut. Now, let's continue, because in the next part, we'll talk about how boundaries aren't just walls, they're bridges to self-respect, and how holding them firm can actually protect the future you. Let's remind ourselves of one core truth: holding someone accountable isn't cruel, it's real. It's not revenge. It's not punishment. It's simply a reflection. You're not attacking them, you're holding up a mirror to their actions. If someone lies to you, then naturally, you don't trust them. If they trample your boundaries, you pull away. That's not drama. That's alignment. That's reality setting in. You don't need to shout. You don't need to explode. You let their actions do the talking, and from that moment forward, their choices begin to define the terms of the relationship. And here's the deeper part: this process isn't just for you. It helps them, too, if they're willing to grow. A truly remorseful person, someone who honestly cares, will understand that healing comes with consequences. They won't demand quick forgiveness, or pressure you to pretend everything's fine. They'll sit in the discomfort of your silence. They'll feel the weight of the distance. They'll face your boundaries like adults face truth. That discomfort, that's their teacher. But what if they don't? What if, instead of owning the harm, they guilt you? What if they twist your boundaries into weapons, accuse you of being heartless, dramatic, or unforgiving? What if they flip the script? Then congratulations, you've received the clearest answer of all. They weren't truly sorry. They were just sorry they got caught. So the next time someone preaches, "Forgive and forget," take a breath, and remember, forgetting is not a requirement. You can forgive quietly, without reconciliation, without explanation. But consequences? Consequences must be earned, or withheld, based on behavior. And if someone keeps showing you who they are, again and again, it is not your job to keep rewriting the story. It is your responsibility to believe them, and protect yourself accordingly. Now let's move to reason 2, because when disrespect comes in patterns, it's rarely accidental, it's intentional. Think about the person who's hurt you more than once. Not a single moment of misjudgment. Not a slip-up. But a consistent thread. A pattern. Maybe it's your sibling, the one who always seems to slip in a jab during every conversation. Just sharp enough to sting, but subtle enough to avoid blame. Maybe it's your adult child, the one who remembers your number only when they're in trouble, but disappears the moment you need help. Or maybe it's that longtime friend, the one who suddenly turns ice cold when you're struggling, but magically reappears when you're thriving, just in time to play the loyal supporter. There comes a moment, and if you've lived long enough, you've felt it, when something inside you clicks. It's that cold awareness in your chest that whispers, "This isn't a fluke. This isn't forgetfulness. This isn't pressure or bad timing. This is a pattern." A choice. And the most painful realization. What you've been brushing off as mistakes, were actually deliberate acts. Repeated decisions. It's like standing in a storm, and then realizing the rain isn't falling from the sky, it's being poured on you, by someone standing above, holding a watering can, smirking as they feign concern. One woman I once knew, let's call her Evelyn, experienced this firsthand. She gave up everything. Last time, we began the story of Evelyn, a woman who gave up everything to care for her ailing husband, only to find herself, in the end, alone, and exposed to a painful truth. When he passed away, Evelyn entered the quietest season of her life. A silence that wasn't just about grief. It was about absence. That kind of deep, bone-heavy solitude that feels like standing still while the world moves on. Then, unexpectedly, one of her daughters began reaching out more often. She called. She visited. She offered to help with errands. And Evelyn, still raw with loss, clung to this sudden attention like a lifeline. To her neighbors, she'd say with hope in her voice, "She's really showing up for me now." And for a while, it felt like healing. It felt like connection. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that help started to shift. What once felt like love began to feel like leverage. Her daughter started, hinting about money, how tight things were, how hard it was to juggle her own life, with the time she was spending with Evelyn. Evelyn, overwhelmed with gratitude and quietly haunted by guilt, started to help. She paid a bill. Then two. Then came small loans. Then came new credit cards. And when Evelyn hesitated, when she paused to draw a breath of caution, her daughter would disappear. Days would go by. Silence. And then suddenly, she'd return, full of apologies and sweet reassurances, "I was just stressed. You know how much I love you." And so the cycle began. And repeated. Over. And over. What Evelyn couldn't see, what so many people in her position fail to see, is that these cycles of emotional manipulation are rarely accidental. They are structured. Predictable. Rehearsed. It starts the same way: a boundary is crossed. A lie. A manipulation. A moment of cruelty masked as concern. Then comes the minimization. It wasn't a big deal. You're overreacting. Can't you take a joke? After that, the charm returns, temporarily. A bouquet of flowers. A kind phone call. A warm gesture meant to soften you, to make you question yourself. And just as your defenses begin to fall, the pattern returns. The boundary is crossed again. This is not chaos. This is design. Modern psychology and centuries-old Stoic wisdom agree: people who gain from breaking others' boundaries will rarely stop, unless real consequences make it impossible to continue. Why would they change? From their point of view, the system works perfectly. And for kind-hearted souls like Evelyn, loyal, conflict-averse, and aching for connection, those consequences never come. So the damage continues. Quietly. Repeatedly. Deeply. But there is a tool. One that doesn't require confrontation or conflict. One that begins the process of awakening. That tool is documentation. Not for revenge. But for clarity. Because here's the thing, when manipulation is at play, the human mind forgets. It bends. It rationalizes. It protects. But a simple written record, date, time, what was said, how you felt, becomes a mirror. It reveals the pattern. And in Evelyn's case, that mirror was a turning point. When she finally put it all on paper, she saw it. The broken promises. The emotional shifts. The timeline of affection that mysteriously aligned with moments of financial need. The fog lifted. What once felt like confusion became structure. And with structure comes the ability to step outside of it. But even more powerful than writing it down, is something older, something deeper. It's learning to trust yourself again. That quiet inner voice, the one that twists your stomach during certain conversations. The one that leaves you drained when someone walks out of the room. That voice isn't paranoia. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the ancient instinct that has grown with you over the years. It's your emotional immune system. And learning to listen to it, is the beginning of liberation. Now, let's keep going, because in the next part, we'll explore how guilt is often used as a tool of control, and how reclaiming your peace means breaking free from emotional debt. Previously, we explored how trusting that quiet inner voice, the one that senses the shift in energy before words are even spoken, can lead to liberation. Now, we turn to the philosophy that has guided the resilient for centuries, Stoicism. The Stoics teach us that suffering doesn't always come from what happens to us, it often comes from our resistance to what is. When we deny the truth of someone's repeated disrespect, when we excuse, explain, or minimize it, we prolong our pain. We extend our suffering by refusing to see what's right in front of us. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is not right, I will happily change. For I seek the truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." That's the heart of growth, being open to truth. But here's what many forget, it is not your responsibility to change other people. Your only duty, is to see the truth clearly, and respond in a way that honors you. So, if someone repeatedly hurts you, if their so-called mistakes start to look more like strategies, it's time to stop bracing for the next apology. And start preparing your next boundary. They don't need another opportunity to prove themselves. What you need is the courage to believe them, the first time. That belief, that boundary, is an act of self-protection. And that brings us to reason 3, boundaries protect your self-worth. Here's something fascinating, and disturbing, from the world of neuroscience. Our brains are not static. They evolve based on repeated emotional experiences. This phenomenon is called neuroplasticity. What does that mean for you? It means that if someone repeatedly disrespects you, and you allow it to happen without consequences, your brain gradually starts accepting that treatment as normal. That's the terrifying part. Over time, it's not just the relationship that deteriorates. It's you. It's how you see yourself. Here's a truth many people don't realize, until it's nearly too late. Every time you let someone mistreat you without consequence, you're not just handing them power over that moment. You're slowly reshaping your own self-image. Every time you bite your tongue when something hurts. Every time you whisper, "They didn't mean it." Every time you sit in discomfort, just to avoid rocking the boat. You're sending yourself a quiet but devastating message: my feelings don't matter. My dignity is negotiable. Their comfort is more important than my peace. That message doesn't shout. But it spreads. Like a slow, invisible poison. It seeps into your confidence. Into your decisions. Into the relationships you choose. One day, you wake up tolerating treatment that would have shocked your younger self, the version of you who still believed in love, respect, and worthiness. You start convincing yourself, maybe this is what love looks like. Maybe this is all I deserve. But there is an antidote. Consequences. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. It's not about controlling someone else's behavior. It's about reclaiming control over your emotional reality. When you say, "If you speak to me that way again, I'll end the conversation," you're not being mean. You're not overreacting. You're declaring, clearly and firmly, my self-respect is non-negotiable. And that declaration can be the turning point, the moment the healing truly begins. Coming up next, we'll dive into how clarity, not chaos, becomes your greatest shield, and why boundaries backed by truth are stronger than any wall built from fear. Previously, we talked about what it means to declare your self-worth, to draw a line that says, "My peace is not for sale." Now, let's explore what that actually looks like in the real world. Because healthy boundaries aren't just ideas. They're actions. They're clear, they're firm, and they're unapologetic. They sound like this. I won't accept being spoken to like that. If it happens again, I will leave the conversation. Or, if you keep showing up late without notice, I'll stop including you in plans. These aren't threats. They're not ultimatums. They're facts, simple truths about what you expect, and what will happen if those expectations are ignored. They're the emotional equivalent of cause and effect. But I know what many of you might be thinking. Won't they think I'm being cold? What if they get angry? Will I lose the relationship entirely? Those fears are valid. Natural, even. But here's the hard truth. If someone reacts with outrage to your healthy, reasonable boundaries, it means they never truly respected you in the first place. Their anger isn't about your change, it's about their loss of control. And yes, in some cases, the relationship may not survive. That possibility can be heartbreaking. But ask yourself, what kind of relationship is it, really, if it only survives at the cost of your well-being? Now here's where things get even more subtle, and more dangerous. Because not everyone reacts with loud anger. Some use silence. Some use sadness. Some use emotional manipulation. They might cry. Guilt trip you. Accuse you of being distant, cold, or selfish. They might promise to change everything, just to get you to lower your guard. But this is where your strength matters most. Because a boundary that folds under pressure, that's not a boundary at all. It's an invitation to be disrespected again. So before we dive into the next reason, I want to pause and say something important. If you're still here, if your heart is beating a little faster, if the truth is beginning to sink in, maybe painfully, then you're exactly where you need to be. You are waking up. And no, it's not comfortable. But it is real. This journey toward reclaiming your voice, your space, your dignity, it's not easy. But it is always, always worth it. Which brings us to reason 4, enabling is not compassion. What you allow, is what will continue. That truth. It should be etched on every mirror we look into, especially for those of us who confuse enabling with love. It's one of the most painful realizations you'll ever face. Sometimes, the pain you feel in a relationship isn't just caused by the other person. It's caused by what you keep allowing, again and again. Let's break something open here. Something uncomfortable, but necessary. There is a destructive cycle that so many people are caught in. It's called enablement. And what makes it truly dangerous isn't just what it does to you. It's what it does to them. Because you think you're helping. You tell yourself it's love. In our last reflection, we faced a painful but necessary truth: enabling someone isn't compassion, it's complicity. And now, we go deeper into what that looks like in real life. Because when you constantly shield someone from the consequences of their actions, you're not protecting them, you're preventing their growth. What you're really doing is cushioning them from reality, softening the edges of their mistakes so they never feel the weight of their choices. And people who never feel consequences don't change. They repeat. Picture this: someone you care about is slowly poisoning themselves, drop by drop, day after day. But instead of confronting the bottle in their hand, you quietly clean up the mess, mop up the spills, hide the symptoms, and hope, maybe tomorrow, they'll stop. But that's not healing. That's enabling. That's emotional codependence wrapped in a blanket of silence. That's love tangled with avoidance. That's empathy, used as an escape hatch. Here's the brutal truth. When someone hurts you, and you forgive them without requiring any actual change, what you're giving them isn't grace. It's relief. And that relief becomes their permission slip to do it again. A pattern begins to take shape. A boundary is crossed. An apology is made. Forgiveness is granted. And the cycle repeats. You both fall into this rhythm, this dysfunctional dance, where your hope becomes your trap. You hope they'll wake up. You hope they'll evolve. You hope they'll finally see the pain they're causing. But without consequences, hope becomes helpless. And here's the great irony. Most people who enable others aren't weak. On the contrary, they are often the strongest people in the room. The survivors. The endurers. The ones who carry the emotional weight of others because they know how to handle storms. But endurance without boundaries becomes self-erasure. You explain, and explain, and explain. You excuse. You make room. You swallow your needs whole, because you believe in their potential. But potential means nothing without accountability. So what if I told you that consequences, real, clear, consistent consequences, are one of the most loving gifts you can give someone? Because holding someone accountable is not punishment. It's not revenge. It's a mirror. It's the one thing that can make someone stop and ask themselves, wait, what am I actually doing? Real compassion is not about shielding someone from the truth. It's about giving them the opportunity to face it. To learn from it. To grow because of it. And no, this isn't about vengeance. Consequences are not punishment. Punishment comes from pain. It seeks to hurt, to repay suffering with suffering. But consequences are different. They are neutral. They are the natural results of choices. If someone lies to you, you stop believing them. Not to hurt them, but to protect your peace. Now let's continue, because next, we'll dive into one of the most misunderstood aspects of healing, how protecting your energy isn't avoidance, it's wisdom. Before this, we talked about how real compassion doesn't mean protecting someone from the truth. It means letting them face it, fully. Now, let's take that lesson one step further. Because protecting your peace isn't just about a one-time boundary. It's a consistent decision. A choice to stop giving your energy to people who refuse to respect it. If someone disrespects your time, stop prioritizing them. If they continue crossing your boundaries, take away their access. Not to hurt them, but to make things clear. Here's the shift that changes everything. Remove the emotion from the consequence. Instead of yelling, "You're selfish. I'm done with you." Say this. "When this happens, it makes me feel disrespected. If it keeps happening, I can't continue in this dynamic." Do you feel the difference? One blames the person. The other explains the impact. One escalates tension. The other opens a door, if they want to walk through it. That's what real love looks like. Not people-pleasing. Not over-functioning. But boundaries. Clarity. Truth. It's standing in front of someone and saying, "I care about you, but I care about myself too. And if I have to choose between your comfort and my peace, I will choose me." And when they get angry, when they cry, guilt you, or promise they'll change, that's not your signal to bend. That's your confirmation. Your boundary is working. Because people who crave control always panic when it starts to slip away. So ask yourself this. If this person never changes, what needs to happen so you can feel peace? That answer is your truth. Let it lead you. Because enabling someone isn't kindness. It's quiet, painful abandonment. Of them. And of yourself. Real compassion. It has the strength to say, "No more." And sometimes, that boundary is the only thing that can set both of you free. Reason 5, reclaiming power and finding peace. Pause for a second. Not later, now. Think back to a time when someone kept crossing your boundaries. Don't minimize it. Don't explain it away. Feel it. Remember how it showed up in your body. The tight chest. The sick knot in your stomach. The heaviness in your shoulders, like you were carrying someone else's guilt. That wasn't just stress. That was your nervous system, screaming. That was your inner self saying, something is wrong. Your dignity is under attack. And deep down, you knew. But you didn't act. Not because you were weak. But because no one told you it was okay to protect your peace. I once knew a man named Carl. A widower in his 70s. Gentle. Soft-spoken. The kind of person who always brewed extra coffee, just in case a neighbor stopped by. In our last reflection, we explored what happens when we finally draw a line and reclaim our peace. But what if that line is never drawn? What happens when silence becomes our survival strategy? Carl's story continues. After his health began to decline, his adult son, charming, charismatic, and always in need, started showing up more frequently. At first, it looked like support. He ran errands, managed bills, made sure Carl had company. It all seemed like care. But that care came with a cost. It started small. Subtle remarks about Carl's memory. Jokes that stung. Comments that made him question himself. Then came control, over who could visit, when, and for how long. Eventually, it wasn't just social visits. It was Carl's decisions being overwritten, financial choices, medical appointments, even his daily routines. All taken away under the label of looking out for him. And Carl? He stayed quiet. For more than a year, he said nothing. He told me, it just felt easier that way. I didn't want to argue. I didn't want to damage the relationship. But here's what he didn't realize. The relationship was already broken. Not because he drew a boundary. But because he never did. This is what happens when we give our power to people who misuse it. We don't just lose control. We begin to disappear. Our world doesn't shrink because we're getting older. It shrinks because someone else's chaos starts to occupy every corner of our mental space. Their moods dictate the temperature of the room. Their presence determines how we speak, act, or even think. And somewhere along the way, we forget that our needs matter too. But now, I want you to picture something different. Radically different. Imagine yourself in Carl's position, but this time, you don't shrink. You stand tall. You look them in the eye and calmly say, "No. That's not acceptable to me." Not with rage. Not with resentment. But with the quiet, steady confidence of someone who has finally remembered. Their peace is not optional. Now imagine the freedom of no longer bracing for someone else's reaction. Imagine waking up, and knowing, without question, that your life belongs to you again. That lightness you feel when you picture it. That's not a fantasy. That's your birthright. And reclaiming it doesn't require a perfect plan. It only requires one powerful choice. Enforce the consequence. Because setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about liberation. And when you follow through, consistently, calmly, something miraculous begins to happen. You stop overreacting. You stop rehearsing imaginary conversations in your head. You stop waiting for the next violation. You start living again, with your full energy available to you. Still, let's be honest, this isn't easy. Because the moment you begin enforcing consequences, an old friend almost always shows up, guilt. You'll hear it whisper. Am I being too harsh? Maybe I should give them one more chance. But hear me now. That guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you were taught to prioritize someone else's comfort over your own mental health. And the more you practice this new way of being, the more it will all come into focus. You'll learn to spot the difference between healthy compassion, and the kind of guilt that's been quietly sabotaging your well-being for years. Coming up next, we'll talk about the final and most vital truth, why healing isn't about winning, it's about choosing yourself, over and over again. Earlier, we talked about reclaiming your power by enforcing consequences, and how guilt can no longer be your guide. Now, let's draw one final, crucial distinction, one that frees your heart even more. There's a difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is about pain. It wants someone to suffer, to feel what they did to you. It's born from anger. And even when you win, you often feel hollow afterward. But justice? Justice restores balance. Justice says, this is harmful. I will no longer participate. Justice doesn't lash out, it steps away. Justice heals. Revenge ferments. Here's the truth most people never learn. The person who hurt you may never apologize. They might never take responsibility. They might stay oblivious, defensive, or even arrogant. But listen, their growth is not your assignment. Your only responsibility is to protect your peace. To honor your truth. To make choices that serve your highest good, whether they change or not. So ask yourself one of the most important questions you'll ever face. If nothing about this person or situation ever changes, what do I need to do to create peace in my life? That answer is your compass. It's your North Star. Let it guide your next step. And remember, this journey isn't perfect. You'll wobble. You'll second guess. You may slip back into old habits, and that's okay. Because every time you reassert a boundary, you reinforce your integrity. Every time you follow through on a consequence, you rebuild trust with the one person who matters most. You. Let's be very clear here. Mercy is for the truly remorseful, not for repeat offenders who treat your boundaries like suggestions. Over this video, we've walked through 5 hard, honest truths that many people live their whole lives avoiding. We've seen why some people absolutely deserve the consequences of their actions. From the myth of limitless forgiveness, to patterns of subtle disrespect, to the emotional erosion of enablement. Every piece has been building toward this final truth. You deserve peace more than they deserve another chance. Because someone who expects constant forgiveness with no change, they're not sorry. They're entitled. And someone who keeps violating your boundaries is giving you a crystal clear message about who they are. Believe them. Don't wait for another manipulated apology. Don't wait until you're emotionally numb and too exhausted to care. Because the longer you wait, the heavier it all becomes. Yes, setting consequences is uncomfortable. But do you know what's worse? Living a version of your life that's smaller, quieter, and edited down just to accommodate someone else's chaos. Don't shrink yourself for their comfort. And if this message hit something deep inside you, if something clicked, then do one thing right now, hit that subscribe button. Because this isn't just a video. This is your reset. This is you, step by step, rebuilding your self-respect. Start small. But start today. And that next video waiting for you. It's not just random. It's the next step toward the version of you who doesn't apologize for having standards.